coasters are always trying to outdo one another, always trying to be the next tallest, fastest, or longest ride in the world. There's a lot of reasons that parks do this, like bragging rights, new headlining rides, but most importantly,
Where are you going, beautiful?
with records comes marketability, and with marketability comes new visitors. Think of how many people know the name King Ka because it's the tallest coaster in the world. The 456 monster isn't at a Disney or Universal park. It isn't at Cedar Point, the self-proclaimed coaster capital of the world, or Six Flags Magic Mountain, the California park with the most coasters in the world. No, instead, King Ka finds itself at Six Flags Great Adventure in the wonderful state of New Jersey. Without this record breaker, this park would not be the second most attended Six Flags parks in the US, only behind the one with the most coasters that's opened year-round. This park would be nothing. Well, okay, well, that's not true. This park would be significantly less visited if King Ka didn't exist. The park still has a lot of other great rides, but no one would know about those great rides if King Ka didn't bring in all the crowds. The record for the tallest coaster on Earth is one that a lot of people are drawn in by. But just how long will that record last? How long will this 15, almost 20-year-old coaster stay the king, and how long will other record holders have the throne? Well, in this video, that's exactly what we're going to look at. We're going to look at every single major roller coaster and see if it's even possible to break them, and if so, when and how. So, like I mentioned before, King Ka has held the height record for 15 plus years. At 456 feet, it is 36 feet taller than the next tallest top thrill dragster at Cedar Point. I have a whole video dedicated on whether this will be broken, but the cliff notes are that yes, it can be broken, but no, it's not likely. The best shot we have is with Falcon's Flight at the new Six Flags Saudi Arabia, which has been promised to be a 500-foot coaster, but like, look at it. You really think this is going to be built? And the funny thing is, that's the most likely option we have for the new height record. The other option is this polar coaster that looks like a strand of DNA wrapped around the tower, but this is probably already canceled. The chances of either of these happening are slim, but it's not exactly zero. But besides these two, there's really no possibilities. Maybe back 10-15 years ago, there were more options, but now coaster manufacturers and parks alike are focusing on smaller, more compact experiences with higher intensity. We see this with RMC Raptors, B&M Inverts, Intamin Blitzes, and it seems to be working. People just enjoy rides that are of higher quality, even if they're of smaller scale. But again, if you want a deeper dive into this, I have a whole video on this, and I'll link it in the card or the description. I don't know, it won't be very hard to find. I'm not going to spend too much more time on it, just know that it's definitely doable, but it's going to be one of those two or else it's not happening. Probably the next biggest world record is the record for the fastest coaster on Earth. And this is going to be another tough one to break, because to ride the fastest coaster on Earth, you literally need to wear goggles. It's that fast. I mean, really, that's ridiculous. Imagine riding a roller coaster that's so fast it could damage your eyes from the sheer speed. I'm sure there's other reasons too, like bugs and stuff, but like, it's crazy that you essentially have to wear protective gear to ride this roller coaster. This is, in its most basic form, armor to ride a roller coaster. The system this uses to launch you to that speed is the same system that the current height record King Ka uses to get it up that tower. It's a hydraulic launch made by Intamin that was unfortunately discontinued a couple of years ago, and that's the main reason that this speed record may not be able to top, because I just don't know that there's any mechanical system that will be able to reach faster than 156 miles an hour. That's faster than most cars. That's faster than most trains. You're literally going almost as fast as an airplane. Okay, maybe not that fast, but you're going really fast. Now, if Falcon's Flight gets built, then yes, the speed record will get broken. But then again, if Falcon's Flight gets built, like every record will get broken, so that's cheating. Plus, we know this ride isn't going to get built. It's a fan fiction. Like, come on. You don't need to lie to yourself. This is not happening. So aside from the hydraulic launch, because it's discontinued, and Falcon's Flight, because that's against the rules, the only other ride system I could see taking the speed record would be an S&S air launch. These are the only launches on the market that can even come close to competing with a hydraulic launch in terms of speed and sheer strength, and even those don't get to 156 miles an hour. The fastest one is, I believe, on Dododonpa, which gets all the way up to 112 miles per hour in 1.8 seconds, but that has its own problems. So if I'm going to be honest, I don't think this will ever be topped. I know that it's kind of a boring answer, but you know, it's the realistic one. Like I said, coasters aren't getting bigger, they're getting smaller. So these extreme records are going to be a little harder to beat. And the same logic is going to apply to this next one, the longest coaster in the world. The current record holder is Steel Dragon 2000 at a whopping 8,133 feet long. That's over 22 football fields long, longer than 133 bowling alleys, but not quite as long as my Anyways, I'm going to take the lame way out of this one again and say that it's not going to be built, especially now after COVID. Everyone's kind of broke, so no one's building gigas. Six Flags has always been broke. Hershey has no park to build a giga at. Cedar Fair doesn't have a park, plus they're broke. Merlin has no park to build one at. Wallaby just went on a huge spending spree, and SeaWorld kind of doesn't have a park to build it at. The only park I could see out of the SeaWorld chain is BGT, but they had a height limit that Iron Gwazi had to be approved to pass, and Iron Gwazi is 200 feet. A giga is 300. That's a significant difference. I don't know if that's going to get approval. impossible. And other than that, there's no real chance of breaking this record. Nobody's gonna make like a 10-minute launch coaster. The only reason gigas are that long is because they need everything to be drawn out. That's what makes them so expensive. Duh. So again, I will unfortunately have to go with the boring answer and say no, this will not be broken. We're going from 2 records that can't be broken to one that can easily be broken. Now, I know what you're thinking. Coast tunes, how could this be beaten? Obviously, those coasters that go straight down are the steepest in the world. And to that, I say to you, you are quite mistaken, old friend. Quite mistaken indeed. I don't know why I called you old friend. We've literally never met. What if I told you there were coasters that went beyond 90 degrees? That would be a terrifying sight, one to get you quaking in your boots. One so horrifying that it couldn't possibly be real. Yes, indeed. There are many coasters that go beyond 90 degrees, and the current world record holder is TMNT Shellraiser with a whopping 121.5 degree drop. That is incredibly steep. I've had the pleasure of being able to ride this, and I gotta say, you feel every bit of those 121.5 degrees. You're flung out of your seat at such an abnormal angle, and bending in on the track is such a bizarre feeling that is unlike anything you will ever experience. I honestly don't know how to describe it. I would say it's kind of like when you touch down on an airplane, but just like 20 times more intense. So at that point, it's not really similar anymore. So think about it like touching down on an airplane mixed with like a car crash. But I do think it can easily be topped because no matter how steep it may look, we can easily go steeper. This isn't like the tallest or the longest where to break the record it's going to cost a crap ton more. No, this would just take a ballsy park willing to make a drop big enough that can accommodate a 122 plus degree drop. But like the previous record was 121, and then Gerstlauer topped their own record when they built 121.5. So it's pretty likely that they'll top their own record again and just go for another 0.5. So yes, I 100% think that this will be topped in the future. It probably won't even be that long either. There's going to be another Nickelodeon universe in China, and there's a coaster that looks very similar to TMNT Shellraiser. I wouldn't be surprised if that park topped its sister park in New Jersey by making it a 122 degree drop or steeper, and it doesn't have to go in tiny increments either. There could be a park that just sends it and goes for like 130 degrees, but I really think that the Nickelodeon parks are just going to keep trading the record amongst themselves by slightly outdoing each other with like 0.5 more to keep it cheap. The current record holder for the most inversions in the world is the Smiler at Alton Towers in Europe. This is a Gerstlauer Infinity coaster that goes upside down 14 times, and it looks like complete madness. And yeah, this is going to be another one that I'd say is breakable. Between this and the steepest drop, Gerstlauer holds a lot of flimsy world records that will probably be beaten within the next 3 to 5 years. This one's a little older, so I'm less confident it'll come soon, but eventually I'm sure a park will get antsy for a big record and not want to spend the cash to do it tallest or fastest, so they'll settle on the loopiest. It doesn't really have quite the same ring though, so whatever. Anyways, the Smiler wasn't even that expensive of a coaster. It was only 18 million euros, which is about 18.3 million US dollars. And I know that sounds like a lot, but other record holders like Steel Dragon 2000 costed 50 million smackers. So 18 seems like cheap in comparison. Well, not cheap, but it seems a lot cheaper. Also, this seems like a Cedar Point move to me. This park loves roller coaster records, having the first Hyper Hybrid, the tallest coaster in the world 3 separate times, and the first Hyper, Giga, and Strata. So the coaster with the most inversions seems like the perfect play for their next big ride, which should be coming in the next couple of years. I have a whole video on what Cedar Point could get next to top Steel Vengeance. I'll link it in the card or description, or you can use the search bar. I don't know, I might get lazy later. It's a pretty old video. It was actually the one that blew up my channel, fun fact, so it's a good watch. You should go watch it after this one. Also, inversions just aren't that hard to squeeze in. Most major coasters in the world are inversion based and squeeze like 5, 6, or 7 inversions in on average in their layout. Like look at this. This is literally brainless. I could break this record. So yes, I definitely think this is one of the records that will be topped relatively soon. This is kind of an odd one. It's also like the only one that's a little subjective because it's kind of hard to measure. Most airtime on a coaster isn't exactly something you can have down to a science. Like, this isn't quantitative evidence. The current record holder is Steel Vengeance at, you guessed it, Cedar Point. It's claimed to have 27.2 seconds of pure out of your seat airtime. Airtime is basically when you have that stomach dropping feeling, or when a roller coaster's forces are so strong they physically lift you out of your seat. It's one of the most sought after forces because it's just really fun. Like, I don't know how to describe it. It's just like a pleasant experience. There's really no other way to say it. I don't know. This is another one I'm going to say can be broken just because of how much of a gray area it is with measuring it. Like, I could totally see just a random B&M Hyper taking it, or, you know, another RMC, or even an Intamin Mega, or like a Long Blitz. Like, there's just so many different models that have the potential to break this just because of how subjective this record is, and that's why it got broken so recently, and the prior record holder only came like 10 years before it. Now, 10 years might sound like a long time, but we're going on close to 20 for King Ka. So in the grand scheme of coasters, It's really not. There's no point in speculating who could take this just because it could be so random. So I'm going to say yes, it will definitely be broken. And hey, it is actually one of the more enjoyable ones, so that's not a bad thing. The last major record I want to touch on was the most expensive coaster. And at first you might think, nah, this is definitely won't be broken because companies are broke. And yeah, that would make sense because that's what I said about height and length records. But here's the thing. The most expensive coasters aren't the tallest or the fastest or the longest. The most expensive coasters are Disney and Universal, and that's a whole new ball game. Whereas before I said no one's going to build the tallest roller coaster in the world because of how expensive it is, Disney and Universal aren't going to build it because it's too expensive. They're just not going to build it because they don't feel like it. It doesn't fit in with their park. But that doesn't mean these companies can't afford it. They are literally rolling in dough. They're indestructible. Nothing you can do will phase their profits. They focus on building super expensive, well-themed coasters. It's almost a common occurrence for them. And for that reason, I'm going to say yes, this will probably be broken sometime in the future. Currently, the record holder is Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure at Universal Orlando Resort, coming in at a whopping $300 million. That makes Steel Dragon 2000's measly 50 look like chump change. It makes like everything look like chump change. But you can definitely see where the money went. This is a really well put together ride that has tons of theming and effects, and it's a super technologically advanced system. There's so many systems working together here to create this fully immersive experience into the wizarding world of Harry Potter. There is one thing though that I do want to bring up, and that's Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind. Apparently this ride costs $500 million, which while $300 million is a lot for Hagrid's, it's definitely believable for what it is. I really don't think this indoor coaster that literally reused the building that it's in is $200 million more expensive than this ground up coaster in a forest using multiple different technologies to tell a story. I only found one source that says this is $500 million, and that source was also talking about Epcot's change as a whole. So I'm thinking that they probably meant Disney is investing $500 million into Epcot, and Guardians of the Galaxy takes a decent chunk of that. But on the off chance that this is true, then this record literally got broken like a month ago, which is why I say it'll probably be broken again in the future. So yes, this one is going to be broken 100%, definitely by Disney and Universal, probably within the decade. That's just gonna about wrap up this video on records. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching all the way through. Videos have been doing pretty well recently, and it means a lot to me, so thank you so much for sticking around, and I will see you all next time.